Good afternoon. My name is Tamika Strong, and I'm the manager of the Reference and Research Division at Auburn Avenue Research Library. Thank you for joining us for our installment of the Find It Friday series, Seasoned Rice, a discussion of Mama's cooking. The Find It Friday series has been a series of presentations done monthly on the third Friday of the month to discuss various resources. And so our next presentation will take place on Friday, December 19th at noon, and the topic of discussion will be Family Search, where we will go through that resource to demonstrate how it can be utilized for genealogical research or family history research. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera. This is a bit disconcerting because I have several videos going or several monitors going at the same time. So my eyes are always drawn to my picture. So one note about the Find It Friday series is that the sessions are recorded. So if you haven't had an opportunity to see something in the past, it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, and I can show you how to get there at the end of this presentation. So, seasoned rice, a discussion of Mama's cooking, exploring Black culinary heritage across the diaspora. And as you know, my name is Tamika. I'm not Marsela. My colleague Marsela had to be off today, and so I am presenting this presentation that she created in her absence. And so, what is seasoned rice? It's more than a dish. It's love, it's history, it's resilience cooked into every grain. It is truly a metaphor of cultural inheritance and culinary wisdom. We joke now on social media about how we season our food until the ancestor says that's enough. So that is one of those ideas surrounded by seasoned rice, where the techniques, the stories, the values that have been passed down to generation, we're utilizing those lessons that we've learned. And it's also the way that Black mothers, grandmothers, and elders, they transform simple ingredients into nourishment and identity. And so I know there are individuals who are in awe at the culinary genius that our ancestors had with regards to making a meal stretch, making a meal out of very little that turned into a culinary masterpiece. And now things that were once pennies that cost pennies on a dollar. The one thing that comes to mind for me from my childhood is oxtails. We had oxtails a lot growing up. Now we can't afford them because they're like $40 a package. And that's simply because of the ingenuity of our elders and how they transformed this meat into something that was very tasty. And once the mainstream got hold of it, then the demand for it went up and they were able to charge more for it. So, going back to our culinary history, it began way back when, back in Africa. And so, our kitchen today is truly an African diaspora kitchen, simply because there are dishes that we have now that still are prevalent in on the continent of Africa. And so a little bit of history about that is when we were brought over, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in later slides. We brought along with us those culinary um, threads, those thoughts, those that experience, that knowledge came with us, and along with us came seeds that were tucked into our hair, tucked in different places, and also the knowledge of farming and animal husbandry, where that's one reason why our culture, our people, our ancestors were sought out to come over to this new country to help build it up. And so okra, black eyed peas, yams, hot peppers, those were some of the vegetables and um, agriculture that we brought with us to this new land. And also the one pot cooking traditions where you have one pot that's going and you just throw in whatever's available to help sustain not only your family, but also possibly members of the community, because it was a traditional communal pot. So people would throw in um, something that they have, just, small things they can contribute. And those small things collectively pulled together and were brought together to create something that was very tasty. So some of the key ingredients from the West African cooking tradition is rice, ground nuts, peanuts, greens, leafy vegetables, palm oil. And some of the essential cooking techniques were slow cooking, layering the flavors, spice blends, knowing what spices together complemented each other, and combining the proteins with starches. And as I said before, communal cooking, so that it's not just one family just providing the supplies and the ingredients needed for the meal, but it's collective, it's communal. It goes back to it takes a village. And so, as is mentioned on the slide, these foundations traveled along with us across the ocean and took root. So, we briefly mentioned the Middle Passage. And so, despite those unimaginable traumas and situations, the survivors, our ancestors, were able to bring over that expertise and do a lot with very little. And they helped to cultivate the rice. They helped to um, build these plantations and these farms. And despite being denied full rations, they were able to create much with a little bit of scraps that they had available to them. They also had their own small gardens, so they were able to garden for themselves. And so cooking on that level became a act of cultural preservation and defiance, because despite you giving us the scraps, we're going to take these scraps and we're going to turn these into culinary masterpieces that have stood the test of time. There are still meals that are being served today, that are celebrated today, that were once the meals of the enslaved. So some of those meals include the greens, collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, cooked with smoked meat, black eyed peas and rice. You got cornbread, hush puppies, grits, hoe cakes, um, those kind of meals, and hot water cornbread as well. I'm just trying to think of some other things, and even not only just the food, but also the cooking techniques and how they were prepared. And it seems like everybody has their own recipe for all of these meals, but ultimately it's still the same dish to a certain extent. And so Sunday dinners were sacred time where you brought the family together. So despite what was going on during the week, on Sunday, you were going to take part in this family tradition of eating a meal together with family members. Church suppers is still the same thing, fellowshipping with those who your fellow churchgoers, and also family reunions. One of the biggest things that brings people together is food. And the family reunions is also an opportunity to share these family dishes that have been passed down from generation to generation. And so, as a side bar says, food that feeds the body also and nourishes the soul. And so, hence the word soul food. So, in various countries, also still a part of the African diaspora, the Caribbean variations in Guyana and Jamaica cooked up rice, which is a one pot rice with meat, peas, and coconut milk. And it is a fusion of the different cultures that are in that country at the time, as well as utilizing locally grown vegetation and vegetables, including cassava, plantains, and callaloo. And so, similar to the Sunday dinners in America, they had Sunday gatherings as well as in Jamaica, rice and peas, maroon heritage and survival foods, ackee, and saltfish, which is a popular dish, is probably the cultural dish for Jamaica, breadfruit, yam. So, and what's interesting about these traditions is that it has some of the same, it may be different ingredients, but the methodology is still the same. The process is still the same. One pot meals, utilizing what's available, readily available nearby. So you may not have the things that they had originally in Africa, West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, wherever the individuals came from. So they found a comparable replacement for those vegetables in this new place they called home. So rice has been a cultural conductor or connector for so many different cultures. We know rice is really big in China. Rice is big in a lot of Asian countries, but it's also big in a lot of countries of African descent as well. So Charleston being one of them, the Gullah Geechee people utilize rice um, almost at every meal because that's the places where the rice plantations were located. They were the ones who helped cultivate the rice crops on the coast of Georgia, Charleston, and other places. And so, of course, that will become a major part of their diet. And so they would utilize, or they have special dishes on New Year's Day, like Hoppin' John, or they have rice and peas, or they have cook up rice, or they have chicken and rice, other things. So rice is served in so many different places and has been transformed into so many different types of dishes because it is one of those resources that can make a small amount of food stretch a long way. So you add rice to it and you can turn something that would have just been enough for one day into several days. And so I know growing up, we had a lot of rice as well, just fried, well, not fried rice, steamed rice, chicken and rice. At some point, you kind of get tired of eating rice, but you realize that that is one of the ways that our ancestors, despite their socioeconomic status, they were able to provide sustenance to their families as well as their communities. So, the techniques and wisdom, what mama knew, taste as you go. Of course, you cannot replace the recipe does not replace intuition. And we have heard, as I said before, individuals saying that I season until my ancestors tell me to stop, and I myself have done the same thing, so I completely understand what they mean by that. We also learn from our moms and our grandmothers and our other relatives, not just the mamas, but also the fathers as well, because they are very formidable in the kitchen as well. And they love to build flavors and layers. They realize that low and slow is the best way to provide a tender piece of meat. Where the oxtail, it was not a, it was not one of those meats that was very well received. But once it was cooked by those who understood that low and slow helps to break down those tough meats to make them succulent and tender, that is the way to go. And so African Americans, or those who were enslaved, they actually transformed the culture, the culinary culture of America, just by the way that they cook their food. And so they know that the right amount of salt brings together everything, and also a little bit of sweetness balances out the heat. And of course, that pot liquor. I don't know if any of you have visited the tea room, Mary Max on Ponce de Leon, but whenever you go for your first visit, they always bring out some of the pot liquor from the greens as a way of saying welcome. And so that is, as they say, the piece of the greens that holds all the nutrients, because it has been sitting there soaking up all of the um, seasonings and the flavors that is used to, it actually helps season the greens, but the pot liquor is still an important piece of that And so one good point is these lessons were not just about cooking. They were about patience, care, and making do with what you have available to you, and taking those things, pulling those together to make a meal so that your family will be fed and the community will be fed. So, continuing on with that, in some cases, the kitchen becomes a sacred space. Some people who are cooking and they're in the midst of cooking, they do not want anybody else in that kitchen because they are in their zone. They're in a place where they're trying to, as it says on the slide, make magic happen. And so, for some, they welcome people into that room because some people grew up standing there with their grandparents, with their moms, learning how to cook. And so that interaction created in them a thirst for cooking and an interest and a passion for cooking, which has led to them leading a life of becoming a chef or a personal chef or someone who just has a passion for cooking. And so it's a way of connecting to the previous generation. It is a sanctuary. It allows individuals who may not have a way of expressing their creativity in other ways to express those things that they feel. And many people would say that when you're eating soul food also has that one ingredient that comes along with every plate, and that's love. Because someone cared enough about you to fix you this plate of goodness. It's also a place of teaching. As I said before, storytelling. That's when you make those connections. That's when you can start asking questions like, when did we start doing this? Who taught you how to do this? This will be a great time for those who are doing family history research to really focus on talking about the family recipes, having a better understanding of who provided this recipe and knowing where the recipe came from. And in some cases, like in mine and many others, these recipes are not recorded, which is a great segue to the next one. They're not recorded. They're just a part of the individual. And so immediately what comes to mind is my mother. And I remember one year asking my mom to show me how to make our family sweet potato pie. And so, excuse me, so what I had to do was I had to sit there and watch her make it and have a conversation with her and just make the notes myself. So I do have the recipe, but the recipe is one piece of it. They sometimes can't really give you the recipes because it's that whole thing of their intuition. They know when to stop. They know how much to put in, and they taste as they go. And so just watching her make that dish or making some salmon croquettes or making the greens, just watching her in her element and having conversations with her about how she gained this knowledge is another way, as we said before, to connect to the past generations because she learned it from someone and that person who taught her learned it from somebody else. And so maybe in that conversation, she can just tell you, hey, this is how we learned this. But it is a great way to connect generations. So we know that Thanksgiving is coming, and this is a time for families to get together, for people to cook together, to eat together. And it's a very good time to just have that conversation with your family members about the recipes that are on the table. Whose mac and cheese recipe is this? Whose greens recipe is this? Like, some families even have contests to see who has the best pound cake, that kind of thing. So it's a great time to connect to previous generations, connect with the current generation, but also learn more about your family and some of the stories that at other times of the year may never get passed down. So feeding people, no one leaves hungry. We have a culture of feeding everybody. Again, no one leaves hungry. So family reunions, cookouts, church suppers, fish fries, block parties, celebrations. The common denominator in all of these celebrations, and even funerals and homegoings, weddings and baby showers are food. So we know that there's food that is like the must have at certain events, weddings and baby showers. Well, baby showers, you got to have the meatballs. Funerals, you're going to probably end up, depending on your culture, with some fried chicken or some baked chicken and some green beans and some cornbread. Family reunions, you're probably going to have barbecue. You're going to have potato salad. You're going to have greens. You're going to have all of these different things. Church suppers, same thing. Juneteenth celebrations, you're going to have representations from the African diaspora in the food. Block parties, same thing. So there are so many different celebrations that we have in our culture that include food. Food is one of the primary things that bring people together. And so the people who are working really, really hard, it takes a lot to cook food for large groups of people. And that is an exercise of love, to stand there at the grill from before the sun rises or early in the morning to mid afternoon to cook all this food for your family, just because you want to make sure that they have the ribs or whatever, the chicken and the steak and whatever else is being served. So not only is feeding the people an exercise of love, but also the preparation that it takes, the service that it takes to get this food on the table, to clean up and all that. That is a part of this celebration as well. And so it's not just the food, it also is the efforts of the individuals who are making sure that the food is available. And so the evolution continues as we grow in our knowledge and we know better and we understand that sometimes the food that we're eating may not be the best for our best for us health wise. We now start looking at alternatives, and we start adapting. We start finding comparable replacements to still have that connection to our cultural heritage, but also have the realization that now we know better, we can actually do better. And we now have the resources that will allow us to actually have more vegan and plant based soul food, to become more health conscious because we're growing older. And so we want to find some more healthier choices because our options or resources are not as limited as our forefathers. So now that we have the ability to go and purchase organic or to sustain ourselves with um, a plant-based diet, then we can figure out how can we change these things that are more healthier for us to mimic the same taste and um, emotional response, for the lack of a better phrase, that eating soul food provides for us. And so, with that, creates an opportunity for creativity, a display of resourcefulness. Because how do you replicate? How do you replicate these greens? Well, greens is not a good one, but how do you replicate a good mac and cheese with mostly plant based resources? How do you find a health conscious version of that sweet potato souffle or that mac and cheese? Or I'm trying to think of some other foods, or the dressing, the cornbread dressing, or even the cakes. Like, how do you become more health conscious with the cakes? The sweet potato cobbler, all of those things. It has a lot of sugars and all those things. So, how do you find ways to honor your roots while also trying to be more health conscious? And so, we do so by being creative. So, with that, how do we ensure that our traditions do not die? And so we're a small group, but feel free to add in the chat because this is going to be an opportunity for us to have a few discussion questions while I continue to present. But what can we do on our own? What part can we play in preserving our heritage for future generations? So, of course, we mentioned cooking with the elders while we still can, having the conversations. And even if they cannot cook because they cannot stand that long, You become their arms, you become their fingers. Let them use you to make the meal, let them guide you. You want to document family recipes, even the ones without measurements, because you want to know how to put it together. You want to bring the children into the kitchen, because you want them to put the devices down and put the game controller down. Come and interact with your family, because this is not just about the work that it's going to take for you to sit here and learn how to peel a potato or chop up some vegetables. Because I remember many a days for Thanksgiving that my parents would put us to work by teaching us how to cut up various things. Of course, younger kids, you did certain things, but once you got older and were able to safely use a knife, you were able to actually learn how to cut a potato, actually learn how to chop up green peppers and celery. And I really still don't like cutting up young onions because, it makes me cry like everybody else, but I just don't like the feeling. But just learning all those different things and just watching them, because at some point you're going to become an adult and you're going to have one of those nostalgia moments where you're going to want to eat one of those meals from your childhood. And sometimes when that nostalgia hits, you have to go to the store and get whatever it was that you had as a child, because it's just such a strong feeling. Um, I had one of those happen to me recently, and it sounds funny, but grew up eating grew up eating instant grits, and it was the country bacon version. And I had a taste for it so bad, I had to go to a store that's in a predominantly black neighborhood, because that's the only place I could find it, and purchase a box. And I was amazed at how much it cost, because I was like, I don't think it cost this much before. But I was like, I don't care what it costs. I need to have it because it has to satisfy this craving that I have. And so sometimes when it hits you, it's so strong. And I had another one where I was heading to my mom's house, and I called her and I asked her, as a grown woman who's more than capable of making her own pancakes, Mama, can you make me some pancakes? Because when we grew up, my mom would always cut her pancakes in these squares, and she would put the butter on it, and it would just seep into the hot pancakes, and it will be that one square that's saturated in butter and with the syrup, and it was just like the most perfect taste. And so it's like when you're having those moments, it takes you back to a time when things were simpler, when things were more comfortable. And I think our minds do that to kind of bring us a level of comfort in the times that we might need it the most. So it's not just about the food, it's about the connections, it's about creating those core memories, so that when we get older, when we reflect on these things, or we just all of a sudden get hit with this desire to go get some Rice Krispies, some bananas, and eat that for dinner, because that's one of the breakfasts we had when I was growing up. Rice Krispies with banana chopped in with some sugar sprinkled on top and all mixed up together. It was so good. And you can do a shortcut now because they have the frosted Rice Krispie treats. But it's those kind of meals that kind of help calm you, help soothe you, help provide you with that connection to the past. And I know I just went down a rabbit hole, but it was just a moment where you don't realize, when you, as a child, you don't realize the memories that are being created when you're doing day to day tasks. Like you might just, hey, oh my gosh, why is the family coming? It's Thanksgiving. Now I got to sit here and I got to cut up all these vegetables and do this and do that. But it's when later on you realize, oh, I miss those days when things were simpler. I didn't have bills to pay. I didn't have to worry about getting up for work every day. I didn't have to worry about figuring out what I'm going to eat for dinner because somebody else took care of that. So it's sometimes those small things that kind of help you get through the day. And when you're having these holidays, it's those memories, and keeping, even if our elders are not with us, our mom, dad, whomever may not be with us, it's those memories. And I don't know if you got a chance to see that Chadwick Boseman just received the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And one of the things that Viola Davis said in her spiel about it was that the thing about memories, and I've heard this said before, is that you aren't truly dead until the person who remembers you passes away. So we want to keep the memory of our elders, of our families, our family recipes alive just by, you can do it just simply by remembering, by saying their name, by doing those things. Oh, yes. Yes, shelling peas and shucking corn. I remember one time my uncles were huge fishers. Some of them still go fishing, and they would bring back those fish, and we would have to sit there on the back porch with the butter knife, and we had to scale those fish. We were talking about scales going everywhere. It's in our hair, it's all over our bodies, our hands. But that's how they put us to work. Oh my goodness. It is crazy. But of course, we do all these things. We create this as a community. We create these spaces, community spaces. And some of the things that we can do now is we can remember these, we can share these traditions with our next generation. There may not be your kids, they may be your nieces, your nephews. It could even be something that you write about. Whatever the case may be, you can do a post on IG, or you can do a tweet about it. You can do whatever format that you want. But just, take a moment to just share something from the past. Like, yeah, it's a surviving technique. And so one of the things that we can actually do is to continue to support our culture, is to support Black food entrepreneurs and farmers. We know that several people are struggling right now. And so we can do a small part by interacting with them, like the Black farmers. They're not hurting as much as other farmers because they weren't the recipients of some of the handouts that were given. But we can do our part by going to find these farmers, seek them out, go to their farm, support them, because they are working hard just like everybody else. And also recognize that food justice is racial justice. So there are a lot of issues with people living in food deserts or unable to buy food. So this is also a time for us to think about others and donate to community banks, Hosea Feed the Hungry, other institutions that are in the business of helping to support individuals who may not be able to get meals. And so, that all being said, these are some of the questions. And I know we can't have discussion because we can chat though. I'm reading your responses and it's been really awesome to see that. That's right. If you don't have the photos, you at least got the food. I was talking to my mom the other day, and one of my ancestors, his name was Bishop Roy Blake. And when I read his obituary, they mentioned his peach cobbler that was to die for. And I was saying to the people in one of the sessions I was teaching, I was like, I don't even know if I ever had his peach cobbler, because if I didn't, I'm mad, because he was in the household with me and I never got to taste his melt in your mouth peach cobbler. So I asked my mom and she said, yeah, you had some. So I can't be too upset because I did have it. But that's the thing we have to keep in mind. So some of these questions include, what is a dish from your childhood that carries deep meaning for you? I would say for me, that would be those pancakes I talked about. There's also, this is going to sound really interesting, but I don't know if you guys know about grit bowls, where they have the grits and then they have the eggs and then they have the protein, sausage or bacon. And so, and you put, the cheese, the salt, pepper, whatever you want to put in there. Yes, those whole cakes. But my mom used to, that's how she fed us as we were growing up. It was 4 kids in a household with us. Myself, my sister, and my 2 cousins. And so we had grits almost every day for breakfast. We had grits and eggs, but then they kind of fluctuated between sausage or salmon or bacon. And so they would make, the way that we ate it was that all of it would be mixed up together. I know there's some people who are like, I don't like my food touching, but we had everything mixed in together. And so before grit bowls became popular or trendy, we were eating grit bowls in my household. And that is still the way to this day that I have to eat grits. I cannot eat grits without anything in it. It has to have cheese, has to have my eggs and my protein. And I'm pretty sure people look at me like I'm crazy, but that's how I eat it. You haven't heard of whole cakes? Oh my gosh. I have to admit this. So, Paula Dean, who has been through some things, and she kind of did said some things, but she's from the South, so you can kind of imagine what she said. She had a restaurant in Savannah. I don't know if it's closed yet, but we went there before all of that happened with her saying the racial slur and everything. But me and my husband, when we were in Savannah, we went there and we had some of her food. And so what they did was they would bring out the hoe cakes. Oh, you're from California. Okay. Okay. So the hoe cakes is like I want to say it's sort of kind of like a cornmeal flour combination thing. It's almost like a pancake, but it's not as sweet as a pancake. It's more depending upon how much the ratio to cornmeal and flour, it could come out more like a flat piece of cornbread, or it could be like a mixture, or it could be a combination of two. But Paula Dean had some at her restaurant, and I tell you, OMG, it was so good. I had to go find her recipe and make it at home. So I'm doing a search for it, and I'm just going to put it in the I'm just gonna throw it into the chat. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm just telling you this is one of the recipes, and it's pretty easy, but it's really really good. So she had a really good restaurant. So just find one of these questions on here and just put in the answer to it in the chat, because I don't want it to just be me, because I still want to share some resources, because of course this can't be a Find It Friday if we don't talk about some resources available at the library. So I'll just leave this up for another few seconds, and you can just choose whichever one you want to answer in the chat. Okay. So, with this being a Find It Friday, we definitely have to talk about the resources available at the libraries. And so, one of the great things about our institution as the library, we have 34 branches, but as a citizen of Georgia, you actually have access to many more libraries through the Pines card. Not sure if you guys have heard of Pines, but it is a resource that is a consortium for all Georgia libraries except for a few. Fulton is not on Pines, but many others are. So if you get your Pines card, you can actually check out materials from all over the place. So I don't have a slide for Pines, but I'll hop back to that if I have time. But for Fulton County, of course, we have our library catalog that, because of our website, is always at the header, regardless of what page you show up on. And so this is just a few resources on the screen that are some of the search results from a search I did on soul food cookbooks. And so these two over here kind of show you some of the evolution of soul food. The Sylvia one is more traditional. And I think Sylvia is the one who had the Sylvia restaurant up in New York, if I'm not mistaken. So these last two are more general to the African American experience. Jubilee by Miss Martin is considered one of the, she's considered someone, if you're interested in researching the history of African American foods, she's definitely a resource. Her books are resources that you definitely have to take a look at. And then there's also the African American Heritage Cookbook. And so maybe you don't have a family recipe for something, or it's been lost. Maybe one thing you can do is you can start some new traditions by looking at some of these cookbooks and pulling out a recipe that might suit the taste of you and your family. Then there are the resource called ProQuest Historical Black Newspapers, which provides you with the archives of 9 African American newspapers from around the US, including the Atlanta Daily World, the Chicago Defender, the Sentinel, the Los Angeles Sentinel, the Pittsburgh Courier, the Philadelphia Tribune. And so I wanted to show that there are recipes in these newspapers. And so once you go to ProQuest Historical Black Newspapers, and I'll walk you guys through how to find it, you can do a search on recipes. And as you can see, there were 57,234 results to the term recipes. And so what I did was I selected a couple of them. And so there's the recipe for, let's see if I can make it bigger. Oh, sorry. So this one here is a recipe for pickling pickling things, and it's from 1932. So if you're curious about some of the recipes that they had back in the past, you can look at newspapers, because that could be one place where your family members got the recipe that they have passed down to different generations. And so this is a resource available to all Fulton County libraries. And so this one is from the Philadelphia Tribune, 1932, and it's a pickling recipe, and it's for chow chow. So you have all of those ingredients, and then they explain to you in detail, like any other recipe, how to make it. And so there's some other recipes on there as well. So I thought this one was an interesting one. This is a tasty recipe, company recipes, like when company comes over. And this is from the Pittsburgh Courier from 1931. And so this one is a little bit different from, the format is different. So with this one, you actually have the list of the ingredients up front, and then you have the instructions. This one is more of a narrative format where it talks about coconut. And if you notice, they spell coconut a little bit different, but coconut transparent pie. And then it gives you the ingredients all in a narrative, like a paragraph form. But then it also gives you the instructions on how to make it. So I'm not a big coconut person, but I figured this would be a good example of just the different formats that recipes have appeared in our various resources. So there's also another resource that is available to everyone. It's called Georgia Historic Newspapers. And this is a resource of where, as a part of Galileo and the Digital Library of Georgia, this group has set out with the mission of digitizing newspapers for every county in the state. So Georgia has 159 counties. And so they're working very diligently to make sure that there's newspaper representation on this website from all of those individuals, or all of those states. I'm just looking at what you guys are talking about in the chat. Wow. Okay. That will be cool. So Georgia Historic Newspapers, I did a search on recipe there, and I received 146,879. Now, the reason why I wanted to highlight this resource is because it's for, newspapers across the state. So it's not just unique to African Americans, but it's just, recipes in general. And so I also wanted to kind of throw in a plug for these resources. How in the Hog, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I think that provides a very good background of food and the cuisine and how it's transformed America. So I have to be honest with you, just be prepared to shed a few tears if you watch this. And this one is on Netflix. So this might be an interesting thing to watch over the Thanksgiving holidays. A recent show that I've fallen in love with because I really like Octavia Spencer is Family Recipe Showdown. And that one is on HBO Max. I think it might be on Disney Plus and Hulu as well, but I watch it on HBO Max. But it's really good because the person who she's working with, his name is, he is a grandson of a very famous restaurant owner down in New Orleans. And I can't call his name. I want to call it and mess it up. But That is a pretty good show to watch as well, because they bring in groups of two, three groups of two, and they're related somehow, like cousins, mother, father, um, not mother, father. Well, yeah, husband, wife, father, daughter. They're working together to create family recipes and show their family style as well. And then, of course, there's Soul Food, which is like the movie that talks about bringing family together. And despite all of the issues that they go through, they still um, use those Sunday dinners as a way of bringing the family back together. And so that is it for the slides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to, sorry, I'm going to hop over to the Auburn Avenue Research Library website. Our web address is fullcodelibrary.org/AARL, which they shortened it, which I'm very happy that they did. And so even if you go to, or you click this link, which will take you to the main Fulton County Library website, you'll notice that the catalog is still at the top. And so when you want to search for books, you can just go here and then type in soul food, or we can just do recipes. Let's see what happens if we type in recipes. Is that spelled wrong? It is. If I type in recipes, it's probably going to be stuff from titles and some other stuff. There's recipes, African cooking. And so there is some cookbooks that do come up with that. But if I type in soul food, just do soul food. It's going to bring up not only cookbooks, but it's also going to bring in some information that talks about the study of soul food, and any titles that have, any books that have soul food in the title. So inspirational stories for African Americans might be of interest, but that is our library's catalog. And so you can use this to find cookbooks. And it doesn't necessarily have to be soul food. So to have Chinese soul food, that's interesting. Okay, so let's see what happens if I put cookbooks together. That goes away. So just know if you have terms that are together or separate, you might come up with various resources. Jemima Code, this is a good resource to talk about the history of African American cookbooks, and that's by Miss Tipton Martin. That's the one who also wrote Jubilee, the Jubilee cookbook. And so if we go back to Auburn Avenue, which is here under Hours Location, Auburn Avenue Research, it's going to take us to the home page for our library. If we click on e-resources, when you say color, what do you mean? Colored, what does the full page? Oh, colored. Okay, let me go back. I think that was under this one. Was it this one? Or was it something else? I'm not sure where we saw colored. Oh, they got Tiana's cookbook. Ooh. Okay, that might be fun. Okay, main page. Oh, you're talking about a main page of Auburn. Okay, got you, got you. So, this is one of the projects that our archives division is working on. So, Hollywood Studio was a studio that took pictures of African American individuals. Now, when you see the term colors, that gives you an idea of the time frame. So, colored is during segregation. So this is before 1950s, 60s, 70s, when, I'm Black and I'm Proud happened, the Black Power movement happened. So prior to that time, during Jim Crow, we were considered colored, for colors only, for white only, that kind of thing. So the Hollywood Studio is a collection that we have, and what we're working on right now is that we're asking people to work with us to identify individuals who are. Yeah, but it's a historical title. So, this was the historical one. So to be historically correct, we have to keep that terminology. but we totally understand that it can be for some a it can be triggering for some people, but we are firm believers, at least for me, that we keep the terminology as it was, because you don't want to censor it. You also want to make sure that people, when you're researching this, when you see certain terms, like when you see enslaved, that's during before 1865. If you see Negro, if you see colored, that's a certain time frame as well. So it's not being done to make people feel a certain kind of way. It's just being done to capture history as it was captured. So, yeah. But you can actually come back to our website and learn more about that if that is something that interests you. So, when we come to the website, we go to e-resources. You can't submit pictures because we have I think this is where we have the negatives. So we have the negatives from this studio, either the negatives or the actual photographs. And we just want people to help us identify the people in the pictures. But we do, the archives division does allow people to submit or donate their family papers. So if you're interested in donating family papers, you can go to our archives website to learn more about how to go about, learn more about what kind of collections we have, but also you can reach out to them to learn about donating your collection. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I know they're exploring many different options or avenues through which to work on that collection, but I'm not sure if they're in touch with that museum. But that's a really good possible resource as well. And so, just to point you to where you can find the Black newspapers, click on e-resources, and then you're going to scroll down. Sorry if it's making you with all the motion, but this is ProQuest Historical Black Newspapers. And once you click on that link, you can type in recipes, or because this is where I typed in recipes. And this is where I got the results of 57,235. But if we type in soul food recipes, I wonder what would happen. So it went down to 1,600. So here, there's the recipe for fried apple pies. There's the mention of a soul food restaurant. And so neo soul food recipes, that's interesting. That's from 2008. Award-winning soul food recipes. So let's just take a look at this real quick. And this one is from the New York Amsterdam News from 2000, and it takes a moment for it to pop up sometimes. And so, so it's a rum sauce recipe. That's interesting. And so it also provides some information about what soul food is and some other things. Okay. So that's one place where you can go. And then to get to Georgia Historic Newspapers, just go to your internet browser search and just type in Georgia Historic Newspapers. And then you're going to go down to this link here. And once you click on a link, it's going to bring you back to the page that I showed you. And so one of the cool things about this, it has a Georgia County map so that you can actually see the coverage. And so all the dark green, these counties have newspapers that are digitized. The light green are the ones that they still don't have newspapers yet, but they are working on them. So considering that they only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 159, I think they're doing a really, 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 really good job. And they're constantly working on that. And so this is free access to 480,337 issues of over 1,100 newspapers spanning Georgia history. So you can't shake a stick at that. So let's just type in soul food recipes and see what we get. So that's a good question, Ms. Reese. I would check with our archival staff to ask them. I think they would prefer the originals, but I think that they would be willing to take copies as well, depending upon what it is. So that's something that you will have to discuss with them. So with our soul food recipe, we're getting results from various newspapers. So when you get the results, you actually see an image, a thumbnail image of the newspaper issue. You get the newspaper title, the city and state, as well as the date where it is. So all of this information relates to that. So this is interesting. This is Lee County. Let's see what this one looks like. Savannah, I kind of figured Savannah would be on there, but Lee County is a tad bit surprising. So this recipe is reprinted with permission from Healthy Soul Food Recipes. Okay. So that's an example of one of those soul food recipes that may have come down through the generations, but because it wasn't as healthy as we would like, they have found a way to make warm peach bread pudding. That's not something that I remember being a part of soul food, but regional taste or regional taste. And so let's head back over here and see what else we got. We got Augusta Focus. We got some Augusta. We got one from Waynesboro. Let's see what this result is talking about. It looks like it's just an opinion piece. Person says that they grew up on soul food. The recipes were passed down, roots and tradition dipped with every mouthful. They've stretched their culinary envelope as they've gotten older and drifted away from many of the dishes to anchor me to my heritage. So this person is really talking about how they have kind of made some changes. And so butter beans and cornbread work for me because I haven't had it in such a long time, like shock treatment. So this person looks like butter beans and cornbread was their thing. So yeah. So there's some interesting things you can find in some of these older newspapers that may be useful for, looking for recipes, or maybe you're doing some other type of research. Butter beans. Butter beans is another Southern staple. um, they're just these beans like this one right here. I remember these. Oh my goodness, I got tired of these. So they have they have the lima beans, but then they also have butter beans. Okay, so I didn't realize that they were both the same. So one is a baby, one is more mature. So this one right here is the butter bean. And so, yeah, I remember eating these. We didn't have those little nice pieces of ham. I think they probably put something else in it, but it's some beans that are treated like a side down in the South. So a lot of these are Southern dishes. So with the last 2 minutes we have, I just wanted to share with you pines. And so the thing with pines is if you are a resident of Georgia, you can actually get a Pines card from a Pines library. And so if you wanted to see what the closest Pines library is to you, you can click on locations and then you can put in your zip code. So like say for instance, if I use our zip code here at Auburn, which I think is 30303, it can show me where it is. Or maybe it's not going to work that well. But you can also look by library system and county. So let's see which one of these comes up faster. It seems like both of them are taking their time. Maybe it's my connection. I don't know. Okay, there we go. At least it has the map now. So if I do search, okay, so with my zip code, which is in the metro Atlanta area, the closest one would be down in Forest Park or in Lithia Springs. And so the thing is, the counties in the center, the metro Atlanta counties like Cobb, Gwinnett, DeKalb, Atlanta, Sequoia, none of them are a part of Pine, so that's why you have to go out further. Because like Rockdale, for me, I live in DeKalb County, so the closest one to me would be Rockdale. But the closest ones for Atlanta would be the Clayton County Library System, Henry County, and even West Georgia Regional, which is over here in Lithia Springs. So you can find one of those, and just with your Georgia ID, you can register for a card. And you can also look for them based on the county and the library system if you like. I'm glad they changed this because it now looks so much better. You can actually read the text. So, with all of that being said, I have kept you a minute longer than anticipated. And so, I just wanted to say thank you so very much for joining us for our Find It Friday on seasoned rice, a discussion of Mama's cooking. And as a reminder, our next session will be on Family Search, which will take place on Friday, December the 19th at noon. And for the past sessions, there's actually a playlist on our YouTube channel. And so if you click on YouTube, you can even go to YouTube and just type in Auburn Avenue Research Library. You can actually find the playlist for Find It Fridays. So I need to double check and make sure all of them are there. But just a shameless plug, we just finished a conference called Collecting, Researching, and Writing the Black Diaspora. And this playlist has all the recordings. And so we had a boatload of boatload of panels. So you can go through and see all the panels that took place. Either they were online or in person, and they're all here. So that's 24 sessions of about an hour each. So it'll take you a whole day to go through all of these, but they have different topics like this one related to the topic we talked about, preserving Black foodways in Atlanta. So make sure to take a look at some of these recordings from past programs on the Auburn Avenue Research YouTube channel, and you will learn quite a bit because there's a lot of great things here. And hopefully there's something for everybody. So with all of that being said, the conference is over, but I'm pretty sure we're going to plan one for 2026. But you can actually go and view all of the sessions here under 2025 Collective Researching and Writing. Oh, sorry. Let me see. Okay. Where is this? Let me go here. Do this. Go to events. Okay. Let me pull up the registration real quick. It's right here. I'm going to put the registration link in the chat so you can register directly for the Zoom. Okay. And that's the registration link. So you can go ahead and register and put your name on the list. So we will talk next month on Family Search. That should be fun because Family Search has done a lot of things to update their website. They now have this full text search that is taking the genealogy world by storm. And so it should be fun. So I'm going to be looking forward to working on this presentation. So again, thank you guys so very much for joining us. And please be sure to stay in touch by checking out our website to find upcoming events. And with that being said, have a good weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. Y'all be safe. Thank you for joining us.